not always those external wounds.
They don't even realize that they're hurt.
From afar, you just can't see it.
Headaches that lasted weeks, memory loss, and the vision problems. They thought it was just alcoholism. I lived with myself. The negative, miserable person that I was, I lived with myself those years when I came home from Iraq, and I was used to me, you know. I didn't think anything different of myself.
It can save your family, it can save your life. If you find yourself in trouble, just call someone.
You just have to reach your hand out and somebody's gonna grab it.
Brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder are often called the invisible wounds of war. They can be difficult to identify. That sounds scary, however, these conditions are treatable. The Department of Defense has made great strides in screening troops returning from deployments. However, this still remains an inexact science. Too many veterans find themselves back home with problems and are confused about where to turn. You're about to hear from Trevor Stryker from Grand Island, Nebraska, a Marine who served in Iraq. Like the 3 soldiers in the Coming Home documentary, he was not originally diagnosed with traumatic brain injury and almost lost his life to alcoholism.
I'm Sergeant Trevor Stryker, United States Marine Corps. I served 2 tours in Iraq. I grew up in Grand Island, Nebraska, born and raised here. Liked to wrestle in high school. I played baseball. I graduated in May of 2002 and I went to boot camp in October. We were QRF, Quick Reaction Force, for suicide bombers. When IEDs would go off, we'd go fill in the holes and we'd do weapons cache searches. We were on a convoy hauling our dozer to an outpost. We were going to tear the outpost down and level it. The dust kicked up and we with our MVGs, we got off the road and we hit a hole. And we got jarred around in the vehicle pretty bad and hit my head, and I couldn't turn around for a couple weeks. And the pain stayed there, and then when it finally went away, it would come back in different areas of my back and my neck, and that's when I would get headaches, you know, and didn't think anything of a TBI. I just knew there was something wrong. Coming home, transitioning out of the combat zone, I had no TBI screening. And the PTSD screening they did for us was very brief. Coming home from Iraq, most of us just wanted to go party, you know, so it was just like, I don't care, just get me out of here, you know, who cares about these questions? And so we didn't take it very seriously. Coming home, you know, things were different, you know, I was different. And people weren't used to me and I wasn't used to the people that I was normally around. Of course, my family was halfway across the country and I had nobody to go to, so I went to the bars and I drank, and you know, and at the time I thought that was a fun, cool thing to do. My day-to-day life was it was horrible. Having headaches daily, even headaches that lasted weeks. Trying to read. My vision would get very blurred and I'd skip lines. I was an alcoholic, a heavy drinker, and I just thought it was a hangover. I belittled myself a lot, you know. I thought I was dumb, and you lose self-esteem. You really don't have a whole lot of self-esteem for yourself. I had a lot of alcoholic symptoms that are very similar to TBIs, you know, the memory loss and the vision problems, and they thought it was just, you know, the alcoholism. And when I sobered up I was probably sober 9 months and I was still having a lot of these same symptoms, and that's when they really started to question it, and it was very frustrating. I never grew up picturing that this was how my life was going to be. I hated my life. I was miserable.
He was a Marine. He served with pride fighting terrorism in Iraq to help preserve our freedom. And yet there came a point after returning home when, to quote him directly, "I hated my life. I was miserable." This is Marine Sergeant Trevor Stryker. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you.
Now, I said Marine Sergeant because once a Marine, always a Marine, right?
That's correct.
Exactly. Now, correct us here. You served how many tours in Iraq?
I did 2 tours in Iraq.
2 tours, and it was on the second tour when your main injury occurred.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say when that was the major injury that caused most of my symptoms of the TBI.
Did you have buddies and so forth that were also injured? Did you have others that were suffering some of the same headaches or those kinds of issues while you were overseas?
That particular vehicle we were in, there was one other corporal with me. He was the driver of the vehicle, and he suffered exact same symptoms and all that I did. So
from a medical perspective, didn't think much of it for the rest of your tour?
No, I didn't. I mean, it kind of, you know, I had back problems and problems with my neck and headaches, and it went away. And so I just figured, I was fine. It was just a temporary deal. And then as it kind of came back off and on throughout the deployment, I kind of started to wonder about it, but I didn't think, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't have time to think anything of it.
So you're coming up on the end of your tour, and you returned home a little earlier than most of the unit from Iraq, but you did have to go through some of the medical out processing and screening and so forth and so on. Did any of that help point towards the fact that maybe you had some lingering problems from your injury?
Absolutely not, no.
Not at the time?
The screenings I had when I got back were very brief, and they weren't very thorough, and so, nothing registered. And at the time, I don't think I had a lot of symptoms. I don't think I had a lot of signs of anything of a TBI or PTSD.
So what were you expecting? You were going to get out now and go back to life? Did you have a job? How did things kind of happen to you then after you left the Marines?
Actually, when I came home, before I got out of the military, I took 2 weeks of leave, and I came home to Grand Island, and I got went around, did some job searching, and I landed a job with a construction company. And so a week after I got home for good, I moved home, got out of the military. I started working for that construction company. I planned on going back to school in January of 2007.
So at one point you say, I hated my life. When did you start to feel like that? And describe what it was going down that path, if you can.
Trying to transition out of the military was very hard. And when I got back to Nebraska, completely different pace of life. I was stationed in California, completely different pace of life. And my friends, they had their lives. They were working, they had families, and I couldn't spend the time with my friends that I did growing up in high school. So, that was a big transition in itself for me. There wasn't as much to do. I didn't have those Marine buddies that I could rely on to be there for me when I needed them. And so it was a huge transition. And I think, coming home, the drinking that I did, getting in trouble with the law, after my second DUI, I really started to get that feeling of, my life was horrible, and, I could have cared less about anything.
So your buddies weren't around you anymore. You probably had friends that were around you. Were you getting any signs, signals from friends, family that, man, maybe you need to do something about your life?
Oh yeah. My buddies were there for the first couple of weeks, and they got tired of, babysitting me. They had to take care of me when we went out to the bars because, I was getting drunk on 2 beers and I was acting like a fool, and so they would look after me, and they got tired of that, and that kind of went away. And so I would find new people to go out and drink with when my buddies didn't want to go, which became more frequent. The longer I got home, the less they could go out. It was more of a weekend deal. So during the week when I would drink, I would pick up people I could hang out with at the bar, and it just wasn't a good situation to be in.
So about every other sentence, something to do with drinking, getting just worse and worse, but trying to cover up something that was going on inside, obviously.
Right, and I looking back on it, I know that I was covering something up, but at the time, I just thought that was the thing to do. I had the money, came home from Iraq. I had, there was nothing holding me back from drinking. I mean, I had money. I didn't need a job. I wasn't in dire need for a job at that time, and so, I thought that was a fun thing to do, is go drink.
Go drink. Trevor was probably at a tipping point in his life. Had he continued down a path of alcoholism and other bad behavior, he could likely have wound up in trouble with the law. But thankfully, he sought help and got it.
It didn't happen the way I wanted to, but it happened for the better, and I changed my life, and I needed the help. I knew I did because I was hurting. And so I chose to go to the VA. I just continued to go because I was hoping that something would happen, something would get better. And it did. Over time, things got better. I was just so miserable at that point in my life that I just was willing to do whatever, and it worked. My life has changed because I actively participate in my life today. I'm grateful for where I'm at today in my life and what I have. I am going to school. I have a beautiful family, a fiance that has 2 beautiful kids. And, I still have my family who supports me and loves me. I got a lot to be grateful today, and that's how my life has changed. I was one of those veterans that had all these symptoms and problems, and when you're an active alcoholic and abusing alcohol or drugs, there's not a lot you can do for TBI or PTSD. You want the problem fixed, but if you don't have a clear head to fix the problem, you can't fix it. And for the veterans that suffer for any of this, you gotta want the help. There's so many veterans out there that need help. It is a difficult situation. There's a lot of symptoms you have to deal with, and there is hope out there. You can get help. You just have to reach your hand out and somebody's gonna grab it.
Help was always there, but as a former military service member, Trevor had to seek it out. Thankfully, he did. So Trevor, kind of on down and outs, a lot of alcoholism, not really knowing where your life is going. Certainly something was needed. Did your family play any role in helping you to finally pull yourself up and seek a direction?
I think my family played a huge role in that. Both my parents, very supportive, loving, and I had 2 brothers that were both in the military, and they kind of knew a little bit about what I was going through.
And so you went back to the VA. Talk about what went through your mind as you turned to them for help.
I questioned it, because the first time I had turned to the VA for help was before I got into the recovery. And
that was for some physical injuries, correct?
Right. I had some arthritis in my knees, and I didn't like the answers they gave me, and so I was hesitant to go to the VA for health care, but it turned out very well. I had a lot of people that cared for me. They could care for me until I could care for myself. And I think that's essentially what got me through it.
So were there some individuals you remember that kind of got you into it and then got you going and you said, yep, we can make this happen?
Yeah, I have a few essential individuals. Joyce Haggard is my case manager for the OEF, and she really pushed me to seek the health care. And then I had a drug and alcohol counselor, Larry Sanders, and Ray Young, that both really guided me through this process too, encouraged me to seek the help, and kind of saw the things in me that I didn't see in myself.
So what's your future looking like now? You have a family now. You talked about that in the segment.
I do. Me and my girlfriend are getting married in July, and I'm going to have 1 class left to take after this semester, and I'll have an associate's in drug and alcohol counseling. And just my life is good. I'm working for the VA, and I'm looking forward to helping other veterans out through their recovery process.
So my life is good. That's quite a bit of difference from I hated my life from the last segment, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge difference. There's a lot of changes that happened in my life to get me to where I am today, and it was being persistent with the VA and really taking care of myself.
You were persistent with them, but it sounds like they were also persistent with you too.
Of course, but I feel that the veteran needs to want to help themselves before they can be helped, and it took me a lot to get to that point in my life where I wanted to be helped.
So what's in your future?
I'm looking forward to a career in the VA. Helping veterans out. I have a lot of compassion for the veterans that I do work with right now, and you know, I think I can be a good role model for those veterans, you know, to continue with the health care, and I can be a good advocate for them.
As you look back now on your experience through the Marines and through the bad times, are there some things that you would recommend doing differently than what has transpired in your life so far?
You know, I think everything works out the way it's supposed to in life, but I think there were some times I gave up on myself a little premature, you know, and I think I just need to stick with it and continue to seek out the help at times when I would give up on myself.
Well, here's the time, Trevor. Here's your chance to kind of tell other soldiers, other Marines, airmen out there, if there's one thing you would have them do differently, coming out of the service, re-entering civilian life after a wartime experience, what would that be?
I think that'd just be persistence. You know, you have to be persistent, and you got to want to help yourself and be willing to take the help that's given to you to have any recovery or any transition, for that matter, into civilian life.